I'd like to call the Monday, July 8th, 2019 meeting to order. Just remind everybody to silence their cell phones and devices, please. Carry the national anthem. Thank you. Please rise if you can. Madam Clerk, any introduction of addendum or delegation items?
There are 3 delegations this evening that will be heard under item 2.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for confirmation of the agenda. Councillor Wells, Councillor Bodner, any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures of interest? Councillor Beauregard.
Your Worship, I have a conflict of interest with item number 2. I am an employee at Sullivan Manny as a legal assistant, and they have given legal advice on this matter to the city.
Thank you. Any other conflicts? Okay. Adoption of minutes with the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole 18-19 held on June 24th, 2019. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Beauregard, Councillor Desmarais, any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Items determining separate discussion. Councillor Bodner, I'll start with you this time. Councillor Clealiff.
Number 2 and number 6, please.
Councillor Danch. Councillor Beauregard. Councillor Bruno. Councillor Bagu. Councillor Desmarais. Councillor Wells.
Number 5.
Number 2. Or sorry, number 1. Yes. Councillor Bruno, can you raise number 1? Sure.
My goodness gracious.
Okay, so approving all those items not requiring a separate discussion, mover and seconder. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Bruno, any questions?
Thank you.
All those in favor? That's carried. No presentations, no delegations, mayor's report. So I had the privilege of attending Port Colborne High and Lakeshore Catholic High, their graduation ceremonies during the last week of June. We presented scholarships recognizing excellence in community service to Jacoby Oscom and Hannah Trainer. We also presented scholarships for students entering the health sciences field. The recipients were entering Brock University's medical science program, and Hannah Trainer, who is entering the University of Guelph's biomedical science program. And we congratulate each of these recipients and give them best wishes for their future studies. Pretty smart kids, let me tell you. Mother Nature finally cooperated with us, and hundreds of residents showed up at H.H. Noel Lakeview Park on July 1st to participate in the Optimist Club Canada Day in the park. I want to extend our appreciation to all of the volunteers with the Port Colborne Optimist Club for the fun activities they put together this year to help us celebrate Canada Day in the park. There were smiles all around, and special thank you to Grant and Carrie at Sobeys for their generous contribution to the cake, which everyone enjoyed. What I found cool about the cake this year, they went to cupcakes with a cake top. It was so easy to hand out, so that was good on on them for putting that together. We're also just 4 weeks away from Canal Days. If you're looking for an opportunity to volunteer, please contact Luke Rowe at the City Hall at 905-835-2900, extension 566. We were successful in receiving a Celebrate Ontario grant, which will bring new activities to Canal Days, including the return of a Sunday night evening concert. We will be catering to our country music fans starting at 7 p.m. on Sunday with Madeline Merlot, followed by Doc Walker. The concert will end just before fireworks. That'll start around 10 p.m. There's a new walleye fishing tournament, and don't be surprised if you run into some wandering nautical themed characters throughout the festival grounds. Make sure you have your cameras ready to post pictures taken with our new Instagram photo booth props. Please check out our website, www.portcolborne.ca, for further details of Canal Days. On Friday, officials from Hydro One and Canadian Niagara Power were in town to announce a collaboration to strengthen electricity infrastructure and improve reliability for the Port Colborne area. I'm just going to read the press release that came out. This is from July the 5th. Today, Hydro One, Ontario's largest electricity transmission and distribution company, announced plans to invest approximately $30 million to advance the refurbishment of the Port Colborne transmission station to improve reliability for the city of Port Colborne. In the interim, Hydro One will move forward to energize a second source of power to enable a reduction of the duration of power interruptions in the case that an outage impacts Hydro One equipment. The city will now have an alternative source to provide the region with safe and reliable power. Upgrades and enhancements to infrastructure will include advancing the refurbishment of the Port Colborne transmission station with a planned 2022 completion date. Once complete, the station refurbishment and upgrades will provide a second source of power to the Port Colborne area to improve long-term reliability. Moving forward, with interim plans to energize a second source of power to be remotely switched and serviced by Hydro One's Ontario Grid Control Centre, a central hub that oversees daily operations. A loss of power grinds life to a halt, impacting businesses, families, and productivity, which is why Hydro One is taking immediate steps to build a stronger, safer electrical source for the city of Port Colborne, said Imran Morali, Vice President, Customer Service, Hydro One. Through this collaboration with the community and Canadian Niagara Power, Hydro One will be able to replace aging infrastructure, improve reliability, and upgrade the system to provide short and long-term benefits to our customers. Canadian Niagara Power has and will continue to invest substantially into its Port Colborne service territory infrastructure, says Don Gilbert, Regional Manager of CNPI. Areas of focus include system refurbishment, distribution automation, and enhancements to protection and control. Canadian Niagara Power also remains committed to vegetation management, system inspection, and maintenance. We would like to recognize the efforts made by Hydro One to enhance reliability from the source provider. We would like to thank Hydro One for hearing not only the concerns of council, but of our residents and businesses making the commitment to adjust their delivery dates for renovations to the Davis Street substation and to reactivate the second line C1P coming into Port Colborne to ensure reliable service to our ratepayers, commented Mayor Steele. Partnerships are important to this administration, and the recent collaborations between Hydro One, Canadian Niagara Power, and the City of Port Colborne are proving to be in the best interests of our residents and business. So that was Friday, and again, we really like to thank both Hydro One and CNP. As I stated on Friday at our press conference, it's the first time the three entities actually sat down at the same table and finally got this issue resolved for long-term good power in Port Colborne. Just one other thing. Recently, there was more than 900 anglers who participated in the Western New York Walleye Derby. The Derby was held in mid-June, but the awards ceremony wasn't held until about a week ago. There was more than $100,000 in cash and prizes, and two of our Port Colborne anglers actually did very well. Second place in the Walleye Derby included a father-son connection occurring on Father's Day, the final day of the Derby. Dave Molloy of Port Colborne was fishing with his son Jacob off Morgan's Point, 1.5 miles, and they were, it says the bait and everything they were using. They received actually $15,893 for fish that weighed in, or a fish that weighed in at 11.77 pounds. So we congratulate Dave and Jacob for that. And they were the business that ran our last Walleye Derby a few weeks ago here in Port Colborne. In the youth division, 11-year-old Peyton Fletcher of Port Colborne, she took top honors with a 10.21 pound fish, the biggest walleye she's ever reeled in. She was fishing on the Canadian side of Lake Erie with her father Mike. They were just trolling off of Rock Point. Peyton was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma when she was 5, fighting like a champ to beat cancer after 6 months in a Toronto hospital. She now fishes every chance she gets, and she's loving every minute of it. So congratulations to 2 of our anglers for taking on a pretty big tournament. In the U.S., by the way, so that's great. We congratulate them. Regional Counselor is not here tonight. Any questions with regards to Regional Council? Seeing none, Councilor's items. I'll start to my right. Harry, you got? Yeah.
Through you, Your Worship, to Ashley. I'm being weighed down by a number of calls in regards to Centennial Park, Cedar Bay Park, in regards to the condition of the shoreline, the seaweed, the fish, with regards to access to the parking, because parking is being taken up by contractors working next door. So visitors coming to the park are finding that they don't have places to park, or they have to park over by the tennis courts in order to walk through. They're also concerned about they complement the washrooms. They're being done and maintained excellently, but the park, they feel, is not being neglected. They've approached some of the city staff at the times, and they are being told that city staff is shorthanded, that they don't have staff to do the work, and that they are focusing their concentration on Nickel Beach, and the resources of funding is being focused on Nickel Beach as well. So there seems to be some communications that we need to get out to some of the people to make sure they understand that it's not just Nickel Beach, we're looking after all of the beaches. So I'd just like to share that along.
Okay. Staff?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wells, for the question. The manager of Parks and Recreation is here this evening, and I'm actually going to ask her to provide an overview with regard to beach maintenance. So she'll be able to take you through what happens on a typical day at Centennial Beach. And after that, I'd be happy to speak to the construction that's also taking place next door.
Nicole?
Thank you, Mayor. To all of Council. So what happens typically in terms of facility and beach maintenance at Centennial? We have a Lakeview crew that attends the facility at opening and closing throughout the beginning of May, throughout the end of the season. We have grass crew that cut the entire area. This year, obviously, we're all aware of the rainy conditions that we have received. So it has provided some difficulty at times because of conditions. We've got tractors stuck out there. We're trying to limit damage to that equipment and also to the grounds itself. So remediation work will not have to happen all the time. So sometimes we aren't able to cut the grass. So yes, certainly length of grass has been a concern, and staff is fully aware of that. The beach itself, it has not been groomed yet this year. I'm new to the position, and I'm not 100% sure of what typically has happened in the past, so I can certainly follow up with that. Again, there has been a lot of algae and seaweed that has come up, but I do believe that's probably an issue across all of Lake Erie currently. Right now, I am unaware of direction from council to increase this type of maintenance, or if it's been status quo throughout. And again, we can follow up with you or direction. I did have a conversation with an individual last Friday with the park supervisor along with me. We talked to that person about the Parks Rec Master Plan and looking for direction from the community moving forward. I think those are most of the points. I'm not 100% sure if you have more specifics, but I'm certainly here to answer them.
Harry?
The concern on the beachfront was not so much algae, it was dead fish, fairly large dead fish, and the activity of the vultures in the area that were coming down to feast on the fish. So that was one of the issues, and that was brought up. And they are also starting to decompose, and the odors on the beach were becoming unbearable.
Thank you, Councillor. Staff?
In terms of the beach, I certainly, I am actually a user of the beach as well myself. So I have noticed these smells and wondered to myself what is causing all of these dead fish to come to the area. In terms of walking the beach and the day that I did, both the park supervisor and myself did say yes, this needed to be addressed, and the Lakeview crew that evening went to the facility and cleaned up the fish. So I can't control fish and Mother Nature.
Okay. Harry, is that it?
That's all I have on Centennial Park. I think Mr.
Okay.
Bodnar might have something.
On this? Yes. Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
A couple of points. A while ago, we had talked about putting extra resources into Centennial Beach, Cedar Bay Beach, because we were cutting back on the people we wanted at Holloway Bay. My understanding was that staff were going to be put on there. We were going to look after that beach so that we could take any overflow when we restricted parking down there. So that's my first question. Was that done? Was that implemented? Or did we just talk about it and staff and council never gave direction? My understanding was that that was a direction from council. I'd like to hear whether that was or not.
Okay. Staff?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. There were, to Councillor Bodnar, there were funds allocated through the last budget process for parking lot repair work in terms of graveling, as well as replacement of certain like park furniture and things like that. But with regard to staffing levels, if we're speaking about having increased staffing levels, there was no budget allocation provided for that specifically, but certainly it's something that I can bring forward to the next council, or would be happy to respond to if council wants to provide that direction to staff.
Councillor?
So I think we need to deal with that. You know, we've got a very nice area that's been great for years. If we have challenges this year with seaweed, I agree you can't control the dead fish, but you can control the people that are going there to pick them up every day, and it should be more than once a day. I hope somebody's actually checking that beach in the morning, and if they're not, I would like council to say we need to put that person on there more than once a day. Get that beach cleaned up. There's no reason people got to be there with dead fish on the beach. It happens every year. You know, it's huge, but let's put some resources behind it and make that go away.
Thank you, Councillor. You had mentioned that there is a morning crew that go in and an afternoon crew
That's correct.
to open and close.
That's correct.
So we can guide them
We are-
into being a little bit more diligent on
That's correct. The
on
beaches.
the beach condition as far as whether it's dead animals, fish.
Yes, it's routinely checked in the morning and in the evening, but also as well during the day. There's park staff that are at the park periodically as well to do other maintenance, whether it's garbage collection or cutting the grass as well, and they check the beach conditions as well. But we'll communicate with staff to indicate to them that we're looking for that this complaint has come forward to council.
Okay, Councillor, go ahead.
Harry brought up grooming of the beach, or at least alluded to it. And Nicole, you'd said it wasn't done yet this year. I would ask why. It's July. You know, were we going to do it in October or something? Is there a plan? Do we have a groomer we can use? So, questions.
Staff?
It's a difficult question to answer because I have not been given direction or been told what the service level is, what requested at Centennial Beach. We are currently in the process of having a Parks and Rec master plan created. with recommendations from various focus groups, your own participation, giving us direction that will allow us to make smart decisions when it comes to these type of things. Yes, currently the beach does have dead fish on it. I would suggest Nickel Beach does as well. The resources that are used at Nickel Beach also have a revenue generation behind them. So they are able to help pay for staff to be at that beach all day, every day, so the maintenance is upkeep. There are not fees associated with using Centennial Beach, with the exception of pavilion rentals.
Counselor?
If it's a matter of direction, I think council should give direction tonight. And if it's a matter of fees, there are fees, it's called taxes. Somebody's just got to step up and say, spend the money on it. And if staff is waiting for the master plan, I think the summer's ruined. I think we need to act on that now. I mean, this is, just do it.
Thank you, Dan. Do you want to have anything to add? Do you want to take that forward to staff? Okay, go ahead.
So through your worship to Councillor Bodner, I think we have a city director meeting on Monday. I'd like to bring this item forward and we can maybe iron out some level of service concerns and make sure that we're getting the people there. I mean, at the park, even though it's a lakefront park, is no different than any other city park, and it should be maintained to a standard. I mean, we wouldn't neglect garbage or other materials in a city park, so why would this be any different? So allow me to take that back during the workday this week or next, or if it, maybe even before the directors meeting, and then we can maybe caucus and come back with a solution that will address this.
Counselor?
Oh, yeah.
Can I suggest that you don't have to come back to council?
Sure.
Just
Well,
do
we'll
it.
make that.
If with, you know, like, we don't want to wait another 2 weeks for something, but would trust that, certainly I would, that staff can come up with a plan and execute it. You know some of the feelings out there of the public and certainly councilors, so do we need a motion, Mr. Mayor, or something to move this forward?
No, I think
No?
I think the CIO has a handle on what you're looking for.
Okay.
I think the two staff members, and then on Monday's managers meeting, they can discuss it. Is that all right? Good. Councillor Wells, is that okay with you? That's perfect. Good, thank you. Any other questions with regards to the beach? Councillor Wells.
Through your worship to Dan, I believe this one would go to. We've experienced down on Pleasant Beach Road some benefits, but I don't know if they can continue. The benefits is that the board there, the group that have the lodge, have opened up the lodge and started charging parking. And they've opened up the property across the road that they own and started charging for parking over there. It's relieved the parking situation there, but I don't know if they're legally able to do that, or if there's something that's in their way that would prohibit them from doing that. And other than that, there are some continuing issues with regards to the gate down to the beach and the lack of washrooms around the beach and the use of the beach as a latrine, if you will. So, but the parking issue is one of concern.
Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Wells, I had the opportunity to speak to a property owner as well prior to the council meeting, and the matter is a zoning bylaw violation if it in fact is occurring. In the zoning bylaw, we have a use which is called a commercial parking lot. We need to be properly zoned to then charge for parking. So the matter will be referred to bylaw enforcement, and a file will be open and investigation will occur.
Thank you, Dan. That may just raise the other parking issue. Just the devil if you do and the devil if you don't, right?
Sometimes be careful what you ask for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Demery, any questions? Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one, I see the city crew is out doing their sidewalk art, and people have been asking me, they see all these neon lines on the sidewalks, and they don't exactly know what the meaning is. Does it mean as a warning that there's a lip there, or is it letting the city know that's gonna be fixed, ground down, or replaced, or whatever, so just
Okay.
like to ask a question.
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bagu. What you're witnessing is the first step in our due diligence as required by the insurance company as part of our minimum maintenance standards. What that's doing is delineating, they're establishing existing trips that are in the system, and depending on the extreme extents of those trips, it fits into a pecking order, if you would, of which ones get fixed first. So there's a criteria that's set out by our insurance companies for our coverage, and then once the list is completely generated and we know the entire system, then we go back and then, depending on the dollars and cents that have been budgeted in this year's repair contracts, we fix as many of those as we can based on a priority basis. So even though they may have a mark on them, it does not mean specifically that they'll get repaired this year. It may be in next year's list, depending on the funding. But yes, that is us delineating what the trips are.
Okay, Councilor, thank you. Councilor Bruno?
Yes, Your Worship, two questions and an announcement. Through you to the Director of Operations, Mr. Lee. Last council meeting, I raised the issue of the commercial signs on hydro poles. Thank you, Mr. Krulik, for putting it in the paper. But I see that some more have encroached, including on that one at Welland Avenue and Kalali Street, where they've started to use signs, commercial signs under the stop sign. So I'm just wondering, I had talked to Ms. Hanson, and she was saying that you guys have had some discussion, so I'm just wondering if you could give us indication on the rollout of that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruno. Actually, staff started last week on addressing those signs. We actually had individuals starting to take some down, and there's a program going forward with the operations manager where staff will be doing this on a regular road patrol. As we came across those, we will be removing those if it's safe for us to. If not, then we will be contacting CNP.
Great, thank you, Chris. Second question is, I've had a number of concerns on, to be honest with you, it was like 6, but it's around the storm sewer charge. And when we had that issue come to council and was heavily debated in the budget, it was my understanding that for outliers who may not be in the urban service area, maybe on a country road in Ward 3, the end of Elm Street may be one that will never see a storm sewer in the next 30 or 40 years, that we would be individually pulling those out of the roll so the $100 storm sewage charge would not occur. 2 of those residents were on a road that is outside the urban service area. They queried about it because at the time it passed in the budget, I had mentioned the debate that happened here. And surprisingly to me, there were some urban areas that feed into the Eagle Marsh drain that I perhaps would not get storm sewers in the foreseeable future. And so they are being charged a storm sewage fee, but because they're in the drain shed, I didn't know how that was going to be handled, because obviously if, in this case, the Eagle Marsh drain, if it's built, my assumption would be it'll be years before the storm sewers came to that particular area, Coronation, Merritt Parkway area. How is that going to be handled, that they're paying storm sewer? And I'm sure the people on the drain who are going to be assessed won't want a reduction in the number of people that are assessed, because that will just raise their price. So that's a rather all-encompassing question, but I want to know how that's going to affect some urban areas. The rural is kind of fairly obvious, and we had a conversation about it, but perhaps you could explain that for the general public on that charge.
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruno and actually to the rest of council. The storm sewer fee, as it's been set up and approved by council currently, is based on a report that was presented to the previous council, actually, which established the area where the charges were going to be levied based on the area defined under the storm sewer master plan study that was released to council. And that's the premise of what the properties are that are being charged currently. That can change at council's direction at any point in time, and if you wish that to be, then we can go back as staff and make some recommendations based on some of the interactions and comments we've had from council. On the other topic that you referred to, in the case of properties that are in the urban storm sewer area, but also within a municipal drain watershed, the intent at this point in time was we use the Eagle Marsh drain as you had initially indicated. We have areas within the urban area that are within that municipal drain watershed. When a report comes forward through the municipal drain and the Drainage Act, it will designate through the assessment schedule of that report what individual properties and parcels of land would contribute to the cost of maintenance of that drain at the time of construction, and then for perpetuity going forward with continued maintenance over the next 20 or 30 years until another report is generated. That being said, the intent was with staff is that once that report came forward, then we would come back to council with a report saying that this is the amount that all of the parcels within that watershed, AKA the Eagle Marsh drain, are required to contribute under the Drainage Act. We would then ask council to take funds from the storm sewer levy, or not levy, but the storm sewer surtax, or call it what you will, and use that to pay those lots portions of what was required under the Drainage Act. So the fund that's being generated on an annual basis would cover any costs that may come about as a result of being within a municipal drain watershed.
Councillor?
Thank you, Worship. So, just to be clear then, the $100 that folks are paying in Merritt Parkway, Coronation Drive, those areas, only a portion of that is going towards a reserve for future storm sewer. So, for example, if they're paying $100 and 40 of it's going to the reserve, 20 years from now, they're paying this, and it will, notwithstanding the fee could go up, they would just be credited with the $40 times 20 years against an assessment on them being serviced by a municipal drain.
Chris?
So, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruno, that's sort of a confusing, convoluted way the way you stated it. Maybe I'll use a better example. I'll use Olga Drive, for instance. Olga Drive has urban storm sewers, but those urban storm sewers dump into a municipal drain. So they receive benefit from the maintenance on that municipal drain. So under the drainage report, it would state that this would be their proportion of what they would have to pay for any maintenance on the floodgate or excavation of the outlet or whatever that may be. When the drain report comes forward and establishes that amount would simply be paid from the fund that they had been contributing to, as known as the storm sewer fund. There would be no additional charges to them. It would continually come from that storm sewer fund.
Councillor?
So just to clarify that, if I've paid for storm sewers at $100 a year, but they do the Eagle Marsh drain and my assessment might have been $5,000, the fact that I've paid $100 for 10 years for storm sewer, which now is the drain, I'm not going to be charged an assessment.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruno, that's correct. Because, first of all, if any of those small parcels, they will never have an assessment under the Drainage Act that large.
Okay.
But they also have storm sewers on the street in front of them that need maintenance, which is...
In that case, yes. But there are others that won't have anything, right? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Oh, that's right.
You got an announcement?
Yes. Yeah. Been working quite a while with, Councilor Danch will know this, quite a while on, and actually the mayor has been working on this quite diligently, Meadow Heights, Phase 2, that's in sort of a state of flux, I'll call it. So staff, Dan Aquilina, Steve Shapowski, Chris, the CAO, have been working to try and organize a community meeting, which will be here on July 23rd from 4 to 6 p.m. So if you're on Apollo Drive, Runnymede, you back onto that newly begun Phase 2 that's in a state of flux. You will have a chance to put your input either mailed in, handed in, or here in person, talking with planning and engineering to see if we can't remedy what many believe are some shortcomings in that subdivision. So I want to thank the mayor, CAO, and the staff that was involved. So if you're in that area of Meadow Heights, Runnymede, backing onto that, again, July 23rd, 4 to 6 p.m. here at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, I want to say thank you to our staff for being able to apply and be granted the Celebrate Ontario grant that is funding the entertainment on Sunday night, the country entertainment that was in your mayor's report. I also am very pleased to hear that country music will be coming. The variety is very welcomed, in my opinion, and country music really talks about small towns and relatable stories that we can all hear. So I welcome it and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dance, anything?
No, we won't bother you tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Just the shirt does, that's all. I like that. I like that shirt, Councillor. Councillor Kalala? Councillor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back to Centennial Beach area, not the beach. I think this will go to Dan, maybe. I continually get, I think Harry might get a few of these too, that the large homes that are built beside the park, they have put a fence right down to the water's edge. It has caused a lot of concern for, I don't know, hundreds of years. People have been walking that beach, all of a sudden they got to walk in the water. I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the property owner owns that land, no different than anybody putting a fence up on the land that they own. What permits were needed by the city? There's some indication that he got a sweet deal from the city somehow to put the fence up there, but was there permits required? Is he on his land? Does he have the right to put that fence up on the beach?
Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bonner, my understanding is, and it's different along the Lake Erie shoreline, some property owners, their lots extend into the water. Some of those end at the water's edge, and some lots end north of the water's edge. So it is all dependent upon what legalities does each lot owner have. The municipality does not have a permit for a fence. We do have a fence bylaw that they need to abide by. So I can't confirm right now at this moment whether or not this property owner does indeed have a water lot. We'd have to look into the legal surveys to determine if that is factual or not.
Councillor?
I've seen some shots on Niagara Navigator, and it would appear that his lot does go out that far from where his fence is, but could we get this cleared up somehow, and is there a way to do that? Like confirm that that fence is okay where it is?
Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bonner, what I would have to do is look what documentation that we have and in fact find out whether or not the property owner does legally have his lot extending to where the fence may be located. We can have bylaw enforcement investigate and may require us to obtain a legal survey to determine if in fact the lot line extends that far south or not.
Councillor?
So we're going to have to spend some money to find this out. Can we take, okay, first of all, if we have to spend some money, do we have to get the okay of council to do that, or the CAO, Mr. Louis, or how can we do this?
Through your worship to Councillor Bodner, I was going to stand up and suggest that maybe we go as far as we can go without spending money, and then if there is a request to go, if there's a need to go further, because maybe we can verify or validate on our own without getting into the cost of an OLS survey. do our own due diligence on our end, and if we do need to spend money, maybe come to council and ask for a further request, with the hope that won't get that far. Okay?
Okay, Counselor?
Yes, that, I would like to see that done, and we kind of finalize that up, and if that's okay, that's great. One other thing, we had talked about parking at Centennial. With the contractors parking right next to the road and the people using the beach and then got to go farther back. Mr. Louis, will you make that part of your discussion at the meeting about that park? And can we approach the owners and ask them to ask the contractors to park further back? After all, they are using our park to access the, and I'd hate to cut that use off and then they couldn't get there, just saying, you know. Anyways.
Through your worship, Councillor Bodnar, I know I hear a lot about the particular property owner who is doing the construction and the contractors who are working for him. I can say that some of the reports that I've gotten back aren't all that bad. The person has been cooperative. The work practices are safe. They do avoid working during the busiest times at the beach for our benefit. We are trying to be a good neighbor. The city's a neighbor too. And we're trying to be a good neighbor and allow them access to their property over our property to make the construction over as soon as possible so that it helps us to get their job out of the way. And because they've been so cooperative, I think I can approach them directly or have staff approach them directly and see if we can secure those assurances.
Okay. All set, Counselor? Great, thank you. Staff responses. I know Amber has something.
So through the mayor, in June I attended the annual AMCTO conference. That's the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario. This conference gives me a chance to connect with other city clerks throughout the province and learn best practices throughout the field. I find this conference particularly important working in a smaller sized city, as I am able to learn efficiencies from some of the larger municipalities and share information. So while at this conference this year, a few of the sessions that I attended that were very relevant to the projects I'm currently working on included electronic document management, improving customer service strategies, and driving innovation. I also attended a session on internet voting in the 2018 election and a municipal experts panel. So as always, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to attend, as I've learned a great deal, and I think I'll be able to implement my knowledge that I've learned in the day-to-day activities.
Great, thank you, Amber. Okay, staff. Any staff have anything to report? Information back? Okay. So items requiring separate discussion. We have item 1, Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Port Colborne Transit Advisory Committee requires a councillor appointment, so direction from council.
Thank you, Councillor. I need a seconder to get this on the floor. Councillor Beauregard. Amber, do you want to give us a little information on this?
Yeah, so currently there is 2 councillors that were representing the Transit Advisory Committee, and Councillor Beauregard has needed to step down because the meetings are daytime. So we are looking for a second councillor to be appointed to the committee. Again, the meetings are during the day though.
Okay. Any volunteers? Councillor Bruno.
Yes, Worship, I have the privilege of being on that committee this year. I'm not sure if this is one of those committees that started off years ago with the terms of reference being 2 councillors and then just languished there. I can only tell you after 2 meetings we have the Director of Corporate Services there. We have Janice there as a secretary. We had Jim Humpman there when he was at Operational Services. And you have myself, and the CAO, I think, attends these other type of meetings. Welcome to have somebody else on, but I'm just wondering if it's just something that was from a bygone era or whether it's required or prescriptively required. Just a thought.
So through the mayor, unless there's any objections from the directors that do attend the meeting, it can just stay as 1 councillor. If a second councillor is not appointed, they won't contribute to a quorum, so it won't affect the committee meeting.
So staff, is that all right? With 1 just for now? Good, Chris? Okay. Oh, should we just, to receive?
Yeah.
We gotta do something, yeah. So, Councilor Bruno, can you, is it all right to, that your motion is to receive this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Seconder was Councilor Borger, that's fine. Okay, any questions on that, councilors? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 2, for 2 reasons. We do have delegations and also Councilor Beauregard's conflict. Councilor Kalala?
Planning and Development Department, Bylaw Enforcement Division, Report 2/1905, subject hunting in Gravelly Bay complaints. I know that we have.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
Thank you, yeah. Seconder for that, Councilor Bagu? So we have Sherry Hansen here to go through the report for council, and then we do have 3 delegations. Sherry, if you want to come up to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to highlight some of the report for people in the audience as well as the general public. In 2007, City of Port Colborne approved Sunday gun hunting on private lands during existing gun hunting season, and this remains in effect. And this is under the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act, and we dealt with this with the imposed legislation from the Ministry of Natural Resources in 2005. We have to keep in mind is that Ministry of Natural Resources and the Conservation Wildlife, land, deer, large animals, we're doing with the Migratory Birds Act and Conventions Act, we're talking about birds, waterfowl in the water. So they're 2 different acts, 2 different legislations, 2 different government agencies. Ministry of Natural Resources, a provincial government. Migratory Birds and Convention Act is dealt with under the federal government, federal waters. So currently there's a 500-foot no hunting zone in the bay, and there was an additional 100 feet that was added by council as a resolution in 1983. We have now a 600 buffer zone from the water's edge. There are currently 3 blinds approximately 1,000 feet apart and 3 from the shoreline and 600 feet apart, and 2 blinds that are 300 from the breakwall and about 600 feet apart. There was a survey that was completed online, and you could do it handwritten, and we entered all those in. There were 700 people that filled out the survey. 42 of those were hunters, 53.4% were not hunters, while 65% of the respondents suggested they do not have an issue with hunting in Gravelly Bay. 11.5% expressed they do not like the noise as a result of the hunting, and 23.5% suggested they have a concern with safety. The City of Port Colborne communicated with the Township of Kingsville. They are a similar municipality, similar size, also on a lake, also having the same issues. We talked to them, and they're on Lake St. Clair, and their recommendation to council included that they do not have the authority to regulate hunting within their lake. I checked with them what they have been doing to date, and to date, the township has still not pursued any additional action because they have no jurisdiction. The City of Port Colborne has no authority to regulate hunting in Gravelly Bay or determine the open season days that it falls outside the municipality's jurisdiction. I talked to both the provincial government and the federal government because the provincial government helps enforce the regulation for the federal government. So you can talk to both those enforcement agencies and their jurisdictions, and they kind of overlap because they have cross-jurisdiction to help one another out. So I asked a few questions about what we could do, and option 1, as I asked, can we change the open season dates within Gravelly Bay, say to November 1st to January 1st, so that the lake can be used by multiple agencies or visitors? And following the discussions with the Department of Fishery and Oceans, this is not an option as the federal government is unable to amend open season dates for a specific body of water without making the exception to the entire hunting region. So, okay, I thought I'll try another route. So I asked another question, and the next question was, Can council choose to pass a resolution to the federal government to request that hunting in Gravelly Bay be exercised from the duck blind only? And again, I got the answer of, this is not an option as the federal government is unable to amend hunting practices to duck blind only. So I tried to come up with a compromise, and at that point, I looked at the survey and all the information, and the recommendation I talked to in this report has to do with adding an additional 150 feet to the 600 feet in the no hunting zone from the Gravelly Bay, pending the approval from Transport Canada, which is managed by the St. Lawrence Seaway Corporation. That's kind of the gist of the whole report. If you have some questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Council, any questions? Councilor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sherry. Sherry, my concerns actually haven't been addressed in the report, and that is about more than one user group using the body of water safely. Because one user group is not more important than another. So if there are people going to be out there hunting, then there probably should not be people out there in kayaks and boats and that sort of thing using it for pleasure. But if they are going to be out there or going to attempt to be out there, we need to be able to provide education so that those people can be kept safe. They should know not to go out there. There should be signage where there should be an educational program. None of those things are addressed in there, and those are my main concerns. Noise and that sort of thing can be addressed rather easily just by maybe cutting back on some Sunday hours or something, just to give somebody some relief. But the more than one user group using the body of water is what worries me, because it's very difficult to control, and the education is not out there. Most people are not aware of some of the rules around that.
Sherry?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is an actual act that you cannot interfere with a hunter in the progress of hunting properly and legally. So you as an individual who is out on the water kayaking or other activities and are trying to scare off the hunters or the ducks, you can be charged for interfering with the hunt. So we used to have a sign up at the boat ramp expressing where the hunting was, all the regulations, and we can look at putting that sign back up to provide hunters or anybody in the area with those regulations, but you should not be interfering with an actual legal hunt.
Councillor?
Thank you, and that's certainly something that needs to be done, but to put those signs back up. But I don't think people are out there intending to interfere with hunts. I think people are out there wanting to use and enjoy that body of water, and rightfully so. Much the same as the hunters want to use it and enjoy it. But the knowledge of these rules and regulations is just not out there. Most of us on council didn't know that act existed. We didn't know the rules around that. We didn't know that people could be charged for being on the same, within close proximity to people who are hunting. We didn't know any of that, and neither did the users. And a kayaker actually came upon a very dangerous situation. That's how we found out. So that's what I'm saying. That level of education needs to be put out there so that people know. And then you do those things, you create a certain safety, and everybody gets to go and enjoy the things that they do in a safe manner, and that's all that matters.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Questions? Councillor Walls?
Through your worship to Sherry. I'm a hunter as well, and I appreciate all the aspects of the hunting and the heritage of it and everything like that. I just was wondering, though, why we have a no hunting zone along the waterfront and other areas, yet it stops at the hospital. Why it doesn't continue on and also include the marina, because the marina falls within that distance. I would also ask that the measurements be converted to metric so that we can bring them up to standard on that.
Okay, no problem. Sherry?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the map goes all along the water's edge, and it goes to the actual property jurisdiction of the municipality, because you can't hunt anywhere within an urbanized area. So that's all hatched out. And as far as making it into metric, the bylaw was written in 1990, and when we have an opportunity to do an upgrade to it, the metric will be added in there like we do with the rest of the bylaws.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kalaloff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Sherry. Can I just ask you, it says in 2007, the city approved Sunday gun hunting on private lands. Does that include, are they allowed to hunt on Sundays along the waterfront?
Sherry?
When it says approved area, that means in hunting zones and hunting areas during hunting season. So for example, if you're going to be hunting deer, previously you were not allowed to hunt deer on a Sunday until that regulation was passed. So there was a request from the ministry to ask so they could update and regulate all the hunting on Sunday in their jurisdiction and their map areas. That was passed unanimously by council, and now you can Sunday gun hunt with regards to deer and everything else. And they mirror each other so that whatever the province does, the federal government does as well, but it doesn't necessarily mean if you take Sunday gun hunting away and you don't allow people to hunt deer, that the federal government will say you can't hunt waterfowl.
Can we reverse this and take the waterfowl out of this, at least give them back the no hunting on Sundays?
Those two separate jurisdictions. Sunday gun hunting has nothing to do with the Migratory Birds and Conventions Act. The Sunday gun hunting was a regulation that was requested and passed by the Ministry of Natural Resources for land animals, hunting, deer, turkey, that type of stuff.
Right, I understand.
If you remove the Sunday gun hunting, you're removing it under the provincial regulations, has nothing to do with the Migratory Birds Act and having to do with allowing hunting in the bay. It's a federal jurisdiction, and the federal government already says you can hunt during those times.
On Sundays?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Counselor? Okay, so no further questions at this time to Sherry?
Can I just add one more thing?
Yes, certainly, thank you.
I have been dealing with and talking to the Gravelly Bay Association, and they have in the past, and what we have been working on is that they don't hunt during the September time when they can usually go out there. They usually wait till after the Thanksgiving weekend in October, so that when you have people that are wanting to use the body of water and the beach and that for different activities, that they are respecting that and trying to work and compromise so that they are going out after that fact, so that they are making sure that they're trying to enjoy the hunting as well as letting people use the other body of water.
Okay, great, thank you. Yes, Counselor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sherry, are you satisfied with the survey? When you tell me that 700 people responded, that doesn't seem like a very large number of people for the number of people in Port Colborne. I know that people don't normally respond to these things, but people living up along the lake and that, and you know, I've had a lot of constituents talk to me about these issues, concerns, a lot of what's going on, things you've spoken about tonight, and I really do appreciate the extra 150 feet. I know it will be welcomed, and hopefully it's a step forward to kind of resolving this issue. Do you have any other ideas, things we might be able to do in future I know you're talking about trying to back it off a little bit till after Thanksgiving and things that they can do to kind of mediate this and find some middle ground for it?
Sure.
Unfortunately, the City of Port Colborne doesn't have the jurisdiction to make changes to this federal body of water, so that's where we're trying to come to some type of compromise. The types of shotgun and longbow and hunting equipment that they use doesn't have the projectile and the distance to make it to the shoreline, even at the 600 feet. So it's just putting it at the 750 more for a peace of mind to ensure that we're looking at trying to come up with a compromise that will appease everyone in that area so that we can have people being able to hunt with the right to hunt in the federal waters, as well as keeping people safe and ensuring that it won't travel to the shore.
Okay, Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This may be for, through you, this may be for Sherry or for some other member of staff, I'm not sure, but to address the concerns that I had mentioned, how do we go about educating the public and who will be responsible for and post signs to make people aware that there are certain things that they can't do around hunters?
Councillor, can you just wait for that?
Sure.
Let's let the delegation speak, only because I do have some ideas in speaking with staff that we can bring forward once we hear from the delegations. I think we can have some cooperation between us and certain members of our community with regards to that. So, is that all right, Kate, Councillor? Good, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, Sherry?
Yep.
Thank you. Don't leave yet. So we have 3 delegations. I'll call them up one at a time, just to remind them. You do have a 10-minute time limit. There's a timer on the computer by you, and it's as well, council, in the bottom left corner. So we have Greg Sarkissian, Delta Waterfowl Niagara Chapter. Is Greg here?
Yes, Greg is here.
Yeah, come on up, Greg.
I'm just going by presentation to a regional director. Is that possible, or do I have to?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'll get that. Just state your name and address, please.
My name is Blake Schmerler. I'm the Regional Director for Delta Waterfowl in Ontario. My address is 108 Benson Drive in Barrie, Ontario.
Thank you.
I first want to thank all of you for giving us the opportunity to be here tonight to kind of explain our side of the story. We have a document here that we'd like to present to you, and I will read to you. I have a bunch of copies as well that I can hand out if anyone is interested. This is rehunting Gravelly Bay and Port Colborne. Delta Waterfowl remains fully supportive of continued hunting in Gravelly Bay. This letter follows past support, including our October 1st, 2018 letter to that effect. Duck hunting remains a long-standing tradition across Ontario and throughout Canada. It connects people with nature in a way that provides an appreciation for and understanding of the outdoor world. Additionally, wild duck meat is a very healthy source of lean, iron-rich protein. Finally, all waterfowl are harvested within a sustainable harvest management framework through federal and provincial regulations, which are informed by sound science, which tracks population status. As our populations grow, and as we see more people choosing to live in more rural areas, sometimes there are exposures to a rural way of life which many people are unfamiliar with. Hunting is one of the traditional activities that can be misunderstood when urban folks move to the country. Hunting in Gravelly Bay is a perfect example of a safe and sustainable activity that provides an opportunity for local people to enjoy a day in the outdoors as part of a healthy rural lifestyle. Most Canadians enjoy time outdoors, and we all need to be respectful of various pursuits we have. We want others to respect our personal choice as hunters. Along with the fantastic food and time spent outdoors with family and friends, waterfowl hunting provides economical, ecological, and recreational benefits to the residents of Ontario. Unfortunately, the number of Ontario residents that hunt waterfowl and elsewhere in Canada is declining, and access issues similar to this are partially to blame. Waterfowl hunting along Lake Erie shoreline has a particularly long history and is a traditional and sustainable use of a renewable wildlife resource. Retaining places to hunt like Gravelly Bay is paramount to providing access there and thereby opportunities for Ontario residents. Such places are treasured by local hunters and provide opportunities for long-lasting memories of time spent with family and friends in the outdoors. Hunters continue to follow safe hunting practices, including hunting beyond the 500 feet from shore as required and within legal shooting hours, a half hour prior to sunrise to a half hour after sunset. This maintains a safe distance for shotgun pellets and minimizes sound disturbances. There are many other areas on the Great Lakes where this is a long-standing tradition of hunting being conducted safely and in similar proximity to both urban, suburban, and rural populations. As a duck hunting organization, we realize the importance of such places for local residents to enjoy time outdoors and to carry these long-standing pursuits. These areas are important to keep open for all uses, including duck hunting. We thank you for the opportunity to continue to be a part of the respectful dialogue between all parties, and we want to ensure that hunting opportunities continue in Gravelly Bay. What do I add here? I just want to touch base on two other points here. Delta Waterfowl is a chapter-based organization. We have chapters based all over in Ontario. We have two chapters that are in this area. One is 35 minutes away, the other is 25 minutes away. We have annual fundraising banquets. The chapter in Hamilton there, they raised $30,000 with their banquet, and the chapter in St. Catharines raised over $10,000. So this goes to, and part of the proceeds that are made from this event stay in the community. So our volunteers are heavily involved in youth hunting, putting out nesting structures to help benefit waterfowl, and to do various other things like veterans hunts and stuff like that. So it's very important for us to support our members here tonight, and we really appreciate you giving this opportunity. We're very interested in working with Port Colborne Council if they have any particular questions that we can help with. You know, I know that sometimes the regulations are a little bit tough to understand, and we're more than happy to help support that. Our voice is strongly considered when new regulations are being made, and we'd be happy to support in any way that we can. If there's any questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer any time.
Thank you, Blake. Any questions, council? Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions. The Niagara chapter, do they actually hunt in Gravity Bay, or is it just a organization, like
So
the actual members that hunt in Gravity Bay?
There are members that do hunt in the bay, absolutely. None of them are here with us tonight. Sometimes it's hard to get out to these things, but yes, there are Delta members that do hunt Gravity Bay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Any further questions? Thank you, Blake.
I appreciate your time, thank you.
Okay, next we have Alfred Marinelli. I know who you are, Alfred, but just state your name and your address for us. Thank you.
It's here?
Yeah, no, let's leave it on. It's on.
Oh, it's on?
Yep.
Okay. I've been hunting Gravely Bay for...
Name and address first. Thanks, Alfred.
Oh, Alfred Marinelli, live in Port Colborne here, 292 Stanley Street.
Thanks, Alfred.
Okay. Yeah. I spent many years out there, going back to the early 1950s and that, hunting in Gravely Bay. I started out with a wooden blind with the 2 hydro poles and a chicken wire, and I graduated into a floating blind with everything cooking and everything else. And anyway, the hunting out there has always been, and the hunters have been very well behaved out there. I paid attention to them when I hunted. I haven't been hunting for a few years out there, but generally speaking, there would be approximately 14 blinds, some running along the break wall, and then there was some along the shoreline, but I think they had to stay out some 600 feet or something like that. It was a good distance away from the shore. And the only time that would be any risk of any sort is if a hunter wounded a duck. By law, he has to make every effort to kill it. And on occasion, the ducks might wander in close to shore. But generally speaking, there was never ever a problem out there as long as I hunted out there. And I think that it's a good setup. There are people at the far west end that don't appreciate the shooting, the noise. I don't know what you do with that, but when you take into consideration that generally speaking you have a southwest wind, it's not that bad. I know when I was hunting out there years back, the sound wasn't that bad, and then even in recent years when I sit out there and watch the guys out hunting, it's not a bad a loud noise sort of thing. And as far as I know, I've not heard of anybody complaining, and I think that it's a good sport, and it should be allowed to be carried on.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Alfred. Alfred's the one that gave me my hunter safety course many, many years ago, so I know he's a safe gun handler. Question, Alfred, more technical question than anything else. The hunters out there shooting, they usually have it's probably a 3-inch Magnum shell or whatever, steel shot or a bismuth, I imagine, right? How far would that shot carry, in your estimation? That's all.
I would say be hard. I don't think it would go 100 yards. You're looking about 200 feet, maybe 300.
Okay.
And the shot doesn't go that far.
And that's even
There are
using
some heavy loads, but
Yeah.
they don't use them out there like for that. They're, up to my knowledge anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Alfred, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jason Clark. Yeah, button's on for you. Name and address, Jason, please.
Jason Clark, live at 28 Coronation Drive in Port Colborne. Forgive me for some of the redundancies here. Stole some of my thunder. It's okay. Again, evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable councilors, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak. As I stated, my name is Jason Clark. I've been a resident of Port Colborne my entire life, over 40, shy of 50 years. I'm also an avid hunter. I've been hunting waterfowl on Gravelly Bay for 33 years. Additionally, I'm the chairman of the Gravelly Bay Duck Hunters Association, and I've owned one of the floating blinds that are out there for almost 30 years. Much to my wife's chagrin, I am out there every Saturday, almost every Saturday from October to December. And when I'm not out there, I grab my coffee and I'm down there on Sundays just watching. Hunting on Gravelly Bay has long been a recreational activity for people of Port Colborne and the surrounding area, and hunting on the bay was happening decades before many of our complainants lived near the lake. People who buy in the area need to realize that hunting is a huge part of Port Colborne's heritage. And it's unfortunate that we're addressing complaints after the fact about the sounds associated with a safe and legal pastime. It's not unlike buying a house in the country and then complaining about the smell of manure from a nearby farmer's field, or buying near an active rail line and complaining about the sounds of train whistles. As we're all aware, waterfowl hunting is legally permitted by the federal government, and all hunters have provincially mandated safety training classes. Al taught me as well. And they teach us about safe hunting and safe handling of firearms. In addition, those operating boats have to take their safe boating course. I can proudly say that in all my experience, 30 plus years of being on that bay hunting, I've never witnessed or even heard of a hunting accident on Gravelly Bay. It goes without saying that those who break provincial and federal laws should be reported to by authorities, whether it be Niagara Regional Police or Ministry conservation officers through the TIPS line. The safeness of hunting on Gravelly Bay is on par with any other recreational hobbies associated with the bay, whether they be fishing, boating, windsurfing, or kayaking. The concern over the level of noise needs to be put into perspective. We're only hunting the area for 3 months of the year. It's not a year-long activity, and the noise is intermittent, not sustained at best. Granted, sometimes the noise can be loud and startling to some, but I imagine that to some, so are our city's fantastic firework events. The volume and frequency of the noise is also truly dependent on the wind direction, the wind speed, and the weather conditions. On calm bluebird days, the sound will carry a long way. But that being said, those are generally very slow days for hunting on the bay. There have been countless times over the years where we've had a great day of hunting on the bay, and neither my parents who live on Tennessee Avenue, where I grew up, or my grandmother who lives just about 200 yards away on Lakeshore Road, they haven't even realized that we were out due to the prevailing southwest winds that carry the sound away. Some of the sounds that our residents hear could be coming from hunters using the Wainfleet wetlands or clay pit area, and or from those hunting further east and west along the lake. As for the noise frightening children, a comment that was made at last year's meeting, I'd like to point out that I work as a vice principal at a school of over 500 kids in Vineland, where the surrounding vineyards use propane-fired cannons to keep the birds away. They produce a sound similar to that of the report of a shotgun, and we hear them constantly going off during the growing and harvesting season. I have yet to have any of my students from kindergarten to grade 8 voice any anxiety over persistent noise. Members of the Gravelly Bay Association follow a strict set of rules and expectations that include blind construction, locations, no shooting zones, and safe shooting directions. At one time, there was an informational sign at the boat ramp that outlined some of these hunting expectations. We've always collaborated with the city of Port Colborne. Back in the mid-90s, we agreed to delay putting our blinds out until the Thanksgiving weekend. We also agreed not to hunt Gravelly Bay until the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. It's something we still adhere to. This is to accommodate the extended boating season to support fishermen, boaters, and other people on the bay during that fall long weekend. That being said, there are many hunters who use Gravelly Bay who are not members of our association, and these people would definitely be aware of the federal and provincial regulations surrounding safe waterfowl hunting, but would not necessarily be informed of the additional shared usage agreements by which our group operates. As chairperson, I have on occasion had several conversations to educate hunters about these agreements. We feel that a sign similar to the one that used to be posted at the ramp with some guidelines, expectations, a map, would help educate the public, clear up some misunderstandings, and continue to promote Port Colborne as a welcoming recreational destination for sportsmen. Hunters are a proud group of individuals. We respect our right to access this natural resource. We invest thousands of dollars as individuals to support it, and we're extremely passionate about our hunting heritage. I welcome the opportunity to continue our conversation with council to help educate the public on hunting in Gravelly Bay. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jason. Any questions? Same. Thanks, Jason. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so council, there is a motion on the floor with regards to moving this from an additional 150 feet to 600 feet, which Sherry can take to the federal ministry responsible to ask for that. And I know the Seaway is also involved, Sherry, if that's correct. But can we, there were some things that, and as you mentioned earlier, there's some things that in speaking to staff we would like to see, and some of them the members have brought up. So I think we should reinstitute the signage. Also, with regards to that sign and the education, that we work with both the Delta Waterfowl Niagara chapter and the Gravelly Bay Association with regards to the sign and education. The other thing I'd like to see added is that we put buoys out like we do during bass season. The buoys should be of a size where you can actually have a sign that's a two-sided sign, so no matter which way they start turning, whether you're in a kayak, whether you're a hunter, a boat, they can see that. So we can have that delineated along the line so that, you know, it's every so, you know, whatever, 100 yards, 50 yards, whatever it has to be. So I think if we allow staff to go back, and not just Sherry's department, because I think Parks and Rec may have to be involved with regards to maybe the buoys and things like that, that all our staff work together with regards to this moving forward. So if there's anything more to add to that, certainly please throw your hands up. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I would like to add something to that. First of all, yeah, I really like all of what you'd said. I think that's the way to go. Because for me, this is not about allowing hunting or not allowing hunting. It's about making sure that all the user groups are safe so that everybody gets a pleasurable experience and it's done. The noise, I do agree that it can be disruptive, but so can fireworks. So yeah, we're there. But in addition to the signage and making sure that it's at the marina and at the boat launch, I would think both areas would be where to go. But possibly some of the hunters might like to come to Port Colborne Market on a Friday morning, maybe at the end of September, and talk to the general public. You know, have them stop by and educate them. I mean, it's just an opportunity to do that, and it's about letting everybody know what's really going on, that you're not big bad guys running around with guns getting scary. It's, you know, you're there doing something that you love to do, and you're doing it responsibly, and you want to share that information with them. So I think that would be a really great thing if you were willing to do that. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I liked your idea quite a bit about the signage at the park and the buoys. I would ask if it does get passed that way that we include Mr. Clark on the sign making, the information and that. He's quite knowledgeable about the bay, fishing, hunting and that, and I'm sure he would appreciate that along with the group. Did he hear me?
Thank you, Councillor. And I think that's all part and parcel, and both those organizations have said at the podium that they will help us as much as possible. So I'm sure with all their members, they can work with staff. Maybe that's probably best through Sherry's office, that portion of it, that we can move forward. Just if Council, just give me a second here. Okay. Council, we've had a submission from the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, and they've asked, even though they didn't present as a delegation, but they did present us with this, but they've asked to be able to speak. So we have to waive procedure. Councillor Desmarais, you'll move that to waive procedure. Councillor Bruno, you'll second that. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. So we have, I believe it's Craig from the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters? Yes. State your full name and address, please, Craig.
I can live with Craig. My name's Felix Barbetti.
Okay.
I live at 42 Millbridge Crescent, Fond Hill, your worship, members of Port Colborne Council. And I've been asked to read a letter from the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters in regards to the issue. First of all, the OFAH, Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, is the largest non-profit conservation-based organization representing some 100,000 members, subscribers, supporters, and includes 740 member clubs. And a prime example, your own Port Colborne and District Conservation Club here, where several of the waterfowl hunters are in attendance. We appreciate the opportunity to address the concerns about waterfowl hunting in the Gravelly Bay area. We also appreciate the explicit recognition of the importance of traditional waterfowl hunting heritage in the council package. Waterfowl hunters play a crucial role in the management and conservation of Ontario's natural resources. The revenue from Canadian Wildlife Habitat Conservation stamps that every hunter, along with the permit, the sticker and the permit, goes directly into which every waterfowl hunter must have, including a small game license. These revenues go directly towards habitat enhancement for a series of activities, many by conservationists. They also require a small game license outdoors card from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. These go into the special purpose account, which funds almost 70% of the fish and wildlife activities within Ontario. And these include the wildlife management and enforcement aspects that have been raised here. The benefits of these wetland improvements go well beyond increased habitat in support of water filtration, flood control, carbon sequestration, and the control of invasive species and endangered species. These were also mentioned in the council package. There are also many indirect benefits to the economy that waterfowl hunters bring areas that they hunt, including lodging, food, supplies, equipment, and so on. Many of the complaints that we are hearing or have been presented to council seem to be regarding safety. Ontario's waterfowl hunters, and this is to Councillor Desmarais, Ontario waterfowl hunters require to pass an Ontario hunting education program, as well as Canada's firearms safety course. These total a minimum of 20 hours learning about wildlife management, hunting laws and regulations, hunting responsibilities, species identification and biology, firearm safety such as safe handling, carrying, firing practices, and responsible hunter shooting. Regulated hunting is proven to be a safe activity, which per capita, and this was touched on, takes that area far below many other normal recreational activities that we enjoy, including golf, hockey, and there's quite a list. And it was also mentioned, and we checked with M&R, that only at very low incidents of complaints have reached the enforcement body with regards to these complaints. On the trajectory, as Alf mentioned, it's highly unlikely, and Sherry mentioned, that any steel shotgun pellets would travel across the existing 600-foot buffer. So safety is not the realistic concern. Therefore, the additional 150 feet would be strictly administrative. This would have a negligible effect on noise, while 163 people who responded to your survey were concerned about hunting in Gravelly Bay. Only 39 people raised the safety concern. And we're suggesting this is more perception than reality, since you should have a metric and a set of reports to show the specific violations. Regardless of the above, any instance of unsafe hunting, and this was mentioned by the last gentleman, should be immediately reported to the MNRF tips line and to local authorities. To our knowledge, and Sherry mentioned this, Port Colborne has no jurisdiction to regulate waterfowl hunting in the bay. Any change to the zone boundaries would require permission from the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation on behalf of Transport Canada. In fact, we question how the existing no hunting zone has been established in the first place, given that the ownership of the bed of water body generally does not confer the right to prohibit, regulate actions on the surface. We would be interested to see documentation that confirm Transport Canada's ability to restrict hunting in this way. We also note in the council package that city staff discussed their concerns with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And this isn't the agency that administers the Migratory Bird Convention Act. Responsibility for waterfowl hunting is through the Migratory Bird Convention Act and management. This responsibility falls to the Canadian Wildlife Service, and it's internationally negotiated in terms of dates and bag limits. Wildlife Services and the Ministry of Natural Resources have direct delegated authority. There are many places where waterfowl hunting, and this is one of the reasons we're raising this again, there are many places where waterfowl hunting coexists with other multi-use activities and landowner safety. Gravelly Bay should not be an exception. OFH, along with other conservation authorities, and you heard from Delta Waterfowl, would like to maintain or even enhance hunting opportunities in this particular area. Thanks for your...
Thank you, Felix. Any questions? Okay, thank you. So Sherry, if you want to come back up, please, to the podium. So in essence, Sherry, I think we just want to make sure that going away tonight, you understand, along with the CAO and staff, where council wants you to move on this. We know this is not our jurisdiction, so we know we can't touch that, so we'll keep our hands off it. But with regards to the additional 150 feet, I think that's fine with council that I've heard. We want to work with both the Delta Group, the Gravelly Bay Association, as well as our Conservation Club with regards to education and the signage, because I know they've all been involved, or at least two of them have been involved in the past. We want to talk about adding some type of marker buoy with a signage on it. So again, working with the proper groups and finding out where we can purchase those and bring them on board. And if the CAO can make sure we can find the funds for those, but you may have to come back to us. I think that was pretty much it, Councillor.
And hopefully support Market Square.
Yeah, I think they can, yeah, I think if Sherry can take that forward as far as the education, how far they want to go with it, and you know, they may have some ideas also out there. But just getting everything, as they say, the ducks in a row. I hate to use that pun. But we want to make sure that, you know, basically within in our hands, what we can help to enhance this, aside from what the province and the feds can do. And I mean, they're the ones that'll have to do that, not us. So you're all set with that then?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am. And can I just clarify for Councillor Desmarais that it's Environment and Climate Change Canada, their Wildlife Enforcement Direction, which is the Canada Wildlife Services, is the individual we were talking to. It was just written in the report with the other agency down.
Okay, great. Any questions to Sherry on this? And council understands our direction then to staff? Mr. CAO, you understand? Okay, our other staff members here, Nicole, you may get involved with this, I'm sure. Okay, seeing that, we have it duly moved and seconded. All those in favor? You want to do the amendment first? Okay, so we'll okay, I was trying to make it friendly, but that's fine, that's fine. So with regards to what we've added over and above, Councillor Desmarais will move that, Councillor Bagu will second that. It'll be in the amendment to the main motion. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Now to the motion as amended. Now that's duly moved and seconded. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you, Sherry. Good job. Item number 5, Councillor Wells.
Engineering and Operations Department, Engineering Division, Report 2019-84, Subject Project 2019-03, Annual Sewer Flushing and CCTV Inspection, Citywide, 2-year duration.
Seconder for that, Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Wells.
Just a clarification through you, Your Worship, to Chris. This is a 2-year agreement, and our budget only goes for 1 year. So if you could just refresh us in regards to this year's budget level. I believe when I looked it up, and correct me if I'm not wrong, it's around $56,000 for the flushing. So that would leave us with roughly, you know, $70,000 for next year. And that this is a 2-year tender. I just wanted to confirm that.
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. Yes, it's a 2-year tender process. This is fixing the rates for 2020, assuming that council sets the budget in the 2020 budget process. What it's doing is tying that contractor to that pricing then for the 2020 year as well as 2019. With regards to the upset limit listed in the budget, this is based on the unit rates within the contract, so those dollars are based on that. We will adhere to the budget numbers and cut them off at whatever the number is, or the number of meters that fit the budget process. So in the report, it actually states that it's how the dollars will be spent. So staff will be monitoring that to make certain we don't run over budget in the process for 2019.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chris. I just wondered, are we familiar with Wessex Incorporated? Have we done business with them before?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kalalev. We have not had them in-house before, but we have had good reports from other municipalities that have. We had a very good turnout on this tender results, as you can see by the report. With 3 of those who were unlucky in the bid process have actually worked for us in the past, so that was encouraging to see.
I just wondered, I actually looked it up and they did have good reviews. I wondered what we knew about them. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thanks, Chris. Item 6, Councillor Kalaliff.
Planning and Development Department, Planning Division, Report 2019-108, subject, request for extension of draft plan of subdivision approval, file number D12H58, Rosedale Plan of Subdivision.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder for that? Councillor Bruno? Councillor Kalaliff.
I just had a couple questions regarding it. I don't know if, do I address this to Chris, or I guess to planning, to Dan?
To Dan.
To Dan. Dan, I guess I'm just kind of overwhelmed when I was reading through it to see that this has been going on for over 30 years. I just wondered, did you get any answer back from anyone? When I looked at your report, you said you had not spoken with anyone up to tonight.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kalaliff, no, the applicant has not, or the consultant has not provided us information. We requested to have information as to where they are at, what they have done, what is the holdup, and we have not received any information.
Councillor?
So I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking I find it rather hard to support even a year extension, because I look at it as this is a choice. A choice to do nothing is a choice. And I feel like we're just enabling this person to carry on and on and on. I can't imagine that the building codes and bylaws, I know things keep getting changed, that things aren't much different than this was initially applied for 30 years ago. So I feel like if it truly is to go forward and he wants it to go forward, should he not be reapplying for this and starting this process over again? This has been dragging on for a lot of years, and I just can't see, giving him even another year's extension. All we're doing is enabling him. Every time he gets an extension without doing anything that he's asked to do, just says that we're okay with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Anything to add to that, Dan? I know it was more of a comment than a question, but.
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We do have the proponent and I believe his consultant here, if you want to come up to the podium. Well, it's part and parcel of them. He can speak, yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Craig Rowe. I'm a senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants in St. Catharines, 30 Hanover Drive.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Certainly. So we wanted to take the opportunity to come to council tonight and provide a little bit of the backstory. The Director of Planning is correct. We didn't submit a formal submission outlining the reasons for that extension. We did have conversations with Mr. Och before and outlined in our letter the reason that we're asking for the extension, and can certainly appreciate the long history on this file and the concerns that City Council would have with it. With this instance, this property is waiting on a lot of things right now. So actually quite timely that Councillor Bruno brought up tonight some of the challenges being faced by Meadow Heights. Part of the access to Mr. Rotella, the owner who's with us this evening, would be an access route that would come through Meadow Heights. So part of developing this site also relies on the completion of Meadow Heights. In addition to that is some work that the regional municipality is requiring in terms of a new main that will go through Mr. Rotella's property, as well as potential access that we're going to have to secure from MTO for access on Highway 58. So in terms of the investment by Mr. Rotella to undertake significant amounts of work and start pre-planning and engineering everything without a guarantee of when he'll actually go to market is a very significant risk. The conversation with MTO is going to be increasingly difficult to get that access onto there. So we've been sitting with the development and arguably moving as fast as we can with it to go forward. But certainly one of the things that we're seeing from the planning and consulting side of things is that we are seeing the growth is starting to slowly move its way south. We're seeing the growth that's going on in Welland right now. So with the draft plan approval, if that's turned down, it's gone. So right now, as you're probably all aware, Niagara Region is currently completing a municipal comprehensive review, which is where they're evaluating all the strategic areas in which they may expand or reduce urban areas. So our argument would be that by allowing this draft extension to lapse, it would basically take away an opportunity for development to go forward in the city of Port Colborne. By extending the draft approval, we're really no worse than where we are. Excuse me. We do have that work to do, but again, I think that conversation with Meadow Heights is going to put us into that position. But if the draft approval is removed, that land will go back to kind of a clean state again. And as you know, the regional municipalities looking at places to grow and strategically invest, those lands may not be at the top of their list when you look at some of the pressures you're seeing in North Niagara, and may actually take away from the available land supply for the city of Port Colborne. So I would say that certainly it would be our intention to participate in that meeting about Meadow Heights and talk about how things are going to roll out there. But we've also been given clear direction from Niagara Region that they're willing to entertain a meeting with us for us to talk about some of those servicing challenges we are having. We did apply for a 2-year extension so as not to have to come back here next year as these developments tend to move not too quickly, but certainly we can appreciate the concern and the recommendation from both the region and city staff that a 1-year extension be entertained and really put some pressure on us to get moving if granted. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions that council may have this evening.
Councillor Kalala?
Do you anticipate within a year that you should be able to get going? I know you're saying I know you asked for the 2 years, but would the 1 year truly give you enough time, do you believe, to put this all into motion?
To clear a development such as this in the uncertainty about Meadow Heights infrastructure and the regional infrastructure, if they're going to have that pumping station or not, and how the pipes are going to play out, we're really playing by what happens with that. So we can't guarantee that. We will likely not be registered in 1 year, but we do have the next year to start those conversations and put the pressure on and sort out how we're going to move this forward and get a lot of the answers we require to move into things like detailed engineering, modifying the plan to make it more modern, like you alluded to, how it was planned 30 years ago. I think I was 3 when it was approved, but moving it forward in a way that makes it a little bit more modern, but we wouldn't want to take away those permissions. It's draft approved. We're able to get growth in this area. By losing that permission right now, it's very unlikely that we would be able to bring it back in.
Would you be able to be a little bit more compliant or a little bit more communicative with our department, our planning department, so that when they're asking you for things that we can get replies, so therefore we know what's going on as far as updates throughout this year?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. We look forward to having those conversations with the director and with Evan as well, and seeing if we can move this forward, and also then engaging our counterparts at Niagara Region too, and getting everyone a conversation to figure out, if we can get this going, how long is it going to take, and what are the other parts that need to move? Because I firmly believe it's not just on Mr. Rotella to move this forward. We have the adjacent landowner, we have the region, we have the city. Everyone really needs to come together to push this forward, but we're prepared to march with them on it.
Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Borgard? Thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, consultant. Certainly the conversation with Meadow Heights wasn't predicated on this development. It was predicated on what's happening, or I should say not happening there.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure that, knowing what I know, the complainants are in Meadow Heights, that conversation, I don't know the extent of what that conversation is going to be. That conversation may be just about the 37 lots that are under construction, as opposed to down to Meadowlark. So I just wanted to keep that in mind, that may not be the linchpin that you might want. Hopefully it is, but maybe it won't. I think my concern from someone who was back in the Todco days, where now you're seeing the gas station go in next to Harvey's, is that these plans of subdivision are twofold. Either they languish because the market isn't there, or, and I think it was then Councillor Steele who used to say, a lot of times we have draft plans of subdivisions where people don't want to live. But we have draft plans where it is a desirable place to live, but for some reason, they haven't taken off. This, I would submit, is a desirable place to live if it could get going. Having said that, I think that there's, and maybe through you to Mr. Aquilina, the fact that you allowed a 1-year extension, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Dan?
Only 1 year, I should say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bruno's inquiry. The fact we only recommended a 1 year was the same reason we recommended only a 1 year 2 years ago. We want to see action. The council that day decided to give it 2 years, which brought us to 2019, which brings us to tonight. The 1 year extension puts the pressure on the developer to move this forward, to then instill to council and to staff that there is seriousness in this development proceeding. And if only 1 year is granted, well, then that gives the development 1 year to make actions happen. And then after 1 year comes to an end, that can then demonstrate to staff to then recommend to council to again extend this draft plan of subdivision, whether it be for 1 year again, 2 years, or maybe 3 years. We need to see some actions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Just to follow up, I'm glad you divided that 10, because my concern is that usually people who do a draft plan of subdivision want to cash out or want to get the thing built because they've got a lot of money invested in it. So I think that for you to segregate the market conditions versus fulfillment of conditions is quite timely. So I could support the 1 year based on Councillor Cale's comments. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions to Craig, though? You have a question?
Yes.
Before a comment?
Both.
Well, let's do your question, then we
Okay,
can let it sit
question
down.
first.
Yeah.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. To the presenter, I really do feel like I'm in somewhat of an echo chamber here because I've heard this story before. So, and I do tend to go along with what Mr. Aquilina has been saying. Can you just tell me anything that would convince me that it would really happen this time? You know, and can you also entertain the idea of 6 months? Because I even think 1 year is too long. So maybe you could speak to that.
Certainly. So anecdotally, through you, Mr. Mayor, we've been doing some drafting work, updating our draft plans to get a better sense of layout to move into some detailed engineering design. But beyond that, it's really to move forward and have the conversations with Niagara Region, and then to get a hold on, we know the landowner for Meadow Heights, so get a conversation there going and talking about how all this is going to coordinate itself together. It is very difficult to, in the 6 month, it would be 6 months would really only allow us to have those conversations, do a little bit of work. I think my comment to council would be that this plan of subdivision at this stage that still needs to go detailed engineering, you're not going to have it ready in 6 months. These things take over a year to engineer and put together. I think that 1 year is an appropriate amount of time for us to, bring those plans to you, and by working side by side with city staff, they can speak to the fact of what we've worked on. They've seen the plans, and then it's really to us to, if we come forward next year and we haven't done anything, then absolutely it should be lapsed. But I think at this point now, all the cards are on the table, and we have comments from Niagara Region, I think perhaps for the first time, saying they're open to having a conversation with us, as opposed to just kind of amending condition numbers and everything. It's the conversation appears open.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again through you. So what you're saying, the draft plan of subdivision that we were submitted tonight that was done in 1988, is that still what you're working from, or have you amended this?
So we're working with a similar framework to it. There have been some challenges, I believe it's with the setback from some of the rock in the ridges, as well as we need to talk to Niagara Region about where their main is going to go.
Okay.
Our client would obviously prefer that it goes under the roadway if possible, so as not to give up any lots, but we understand that there may be some challenges with that. So we may be looking at a slight amendment to that plan, but it would be predicated on any engineering design or some troubleshooting that we do with the appropriate agencies.
Councillor?
Okay, I'm just I'm not hearing anything new. I just wonder what had stopped you from having these conversations in the last couple of years? I mean, you've had a few years to be doing this, and I have not heard, I believe that what the region is sending us this time is a lot of what they've sent us the last time. So I'm not hearing anything different. So I'm not understanding still what would make this different. That's okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, really it's, our client has been pushing us for the past couple of months to get this online and get it going again. He doesn't want to wait any longer. So we jump at their command to move it forward, and certainly with that deadline for the lapsing of the subdivision, we've been forced into action. And he wants to proceed, and we have to have many of those conversations. But certainly if we're granted a 1-year approval, then we're going to have to show up here a year from now with some pretty convincing evidence that the work's been done, but we're prepared to undertake it.
Okay, thank you. Counselor, you're all set? Any other questions? Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Comment? Well, I know you had questions and comments, so I'll take comments now, that's all. Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you. I guess I'll talk before the amendment. One thing, I read this report, and I'm not impressed whatsoever. The staff time, the cost of our staff dealing with this, chasing after the proposed developer. Other people are wanting to build a Port Colborne. They're getting delayed because our staff is working on other stuff, supposedly this, or chasing somebody. And to tell you the truth, I'm not in favor of this extending it 1 minute.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment that we move this time to 6 months. I more agree with Councillor Bagu, and I almost don't want to move this at all tonight, but in the interest of fairness, I would suggest we move it to 6 months.
Okay, I need a seconder for that amendment. Councillor Wells. Questions to the amendment? Councillor.
Guess now you get a full view of my shirt.
Yeah, I like it. I don't mind this shirt.
So we're going back to the fellow here, and the extension. Is he going to have to pay the city again for this extension?
Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, there is an application fee to do so.
Councillor?
So although we may have staff time involved with this, he's also paying to have this service done. So it's not like he's taking a free ride every time. So I don't think I'm really in favor of a 6-month amendment. I think we all know the land. Some of us have sat here for a few years. I'd like to say give him a year and get it going, but we'll see what you guys vote on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it sounds like, based on what the consultant was just saying, a year's time is what he at least needs in order to get some of this information that he needs to get through. So I am not in favor of this amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so councillors, we have an amendment to move this to 6 months. It's duly moved and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's defeated. Any other questions? No other questions? Sorry. So we have a mover and a seconder for the motion that's on the floor. No further questions. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And that's it. Any notices of motion? Councillor Wells.
Through you, Your Worship, just a reminder that to council that I gave a notice of motion on the May 11th council meeting in regards to the noise and firearm discharge bylaws. And we're still working with staff on that to actively get the provisions to include exploding targets on that. So that is still pending. But I would also like to give notice of a motion to amend bylaw 5528/125/10, a bylaw to regulate the removal of topsoil, the placing of dumping fill and alteration of grade on land in PC.
Okay, thank you. Any other notices of motion? Move to adjourn. Counselor Danch, Counselor Beauregard, questions? All those in favor? That's carried. I will call the council meeting of Monday, July 8th, 2019 to order. Madam Clerk, any addendum items?
There are no addendum items this evening.
Mover and a seconder to confirm the agenda. Counselor Wells, Counselor Beauregard, any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures of interest? Counselor Beauregard.
I have a conflict of interest on item number 2 because I've employed with Solid Many, who has given legal advice on this particular matter.
Okay, thank you. We have one set of minutes, the regular meeting of council 17-19 held on June 24th, 2019. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Clayliff, Councillor Bodner. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. So we have so far one item, item 2. So if somebody can move that to bring that forward. Councillor Desmarais, you bring that forward. Okay, any other items anybody wants to bring forward? Okay, so item 2. Mover and a seconder for all other items. Councillor Wells, Councillor Bruno. Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. We have no proclamations. We have minutes. We have minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. I'll do these in block. Minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting of May 27th, 2019 draft. Minutes of the Port Colborne Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting of April 29th, 2019. Minutes of the Canal Days Advisory Committee meeting of May 1st, 2019. Minutes of the Port Colborne Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting March 21st, 2018, April 3rd, 2019 draft, and August 1st, 2018. Minutes of the Port Colborne Historical and Marine Museum meeting of May 21st, 2019. Minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of May the 14th, 2019. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Bruno, Councillor Wells, any questions on any of those? All those in favor? That's carried. Oh, sorry, I apologize. Yeah. Item 2, for the conflict for Councillor Beauregard, moved by Councillor Desmarais. Seconder to that, Councillor Wells. Although there's a conflict, any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Sorry, Madam Clerk. Consideration of bylaws, Madam Clerk.
There are 5 bylaws this evening. Bylaw 6699-63-19, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy clerk, commissioner for taking affidavits. Bylaw 6700-64-19, being a bylaw to temporarily close sections of various streets to vehicular traffic for the purpose of the 41st Annual Canal Days Festival. Bylaw 6701-65-19, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Westfield Inc. Re-Tender 2019-03, annual sewer flushing and CCTV inspection. Bylaw 6702-66-19, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 5991-97-13, being a bylaw to set a lapsing date of draft plan approval for Rosedale subdivision. Bylaw 6703-67-19, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the city of Port Colborne at a special and regular meetings of July 8th, 2019.
Mover and a seconder. Councillor Beauregard, Councillor Bodner. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Item 12, council in closed session. I need a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Bruno. Questions? All those in favor? That's carried. The council to now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. Minutes of the closed session portion of the following council meeting, June 24th, 2019. Planning and Development Department, Planning Division, Outline Planning 101, Council Training Municipal Act 2001, subsections 239, 3.1a. Meeting of a council or local board or a committee of either of them may be closed to the public if the following conditions are both satisfied. 1, the meeting is held for the purpose of educating or training of members. 2, at the meeting no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of the council, local board, or committee. C, Planning and Development Department, Planning Division Report 2019-1 105, concerning the potential disposition of city-owned land pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsections 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. D, Planning and Development Department Planning Division Report 2019-107, concerning the potential disposition of disposition of city-owned land pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. E, Corporate Services Department Clerks Division Report 2019-106, subject appointments to boards and committees pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. With that, any disclosures of interest going into closed session? Okay, we will now move into closed session. Thank you.